Okay, this is Miss Alma, and she's going to talk about the early parts of her life today. Miss Alma Jean, where were you born?
I was born in Perryton, Ohio, on Briarcliff Road, what it's named now, which was a Perryton address, Perryton, Ohio.
Okay.
I was 8 pound and something, and I guess I was born hungry. So they had to fix me a sugar tit, which is something they did back then. And of course, Dr. Wells delivered me and delivered in the home, of course.
You were born at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyhow, I was born September 14th, 1935, which I am now 89 years old. And my grandson used to tell me a while back, maybe 10 years ago, I was getting old, and I said, I think getting old is when you start to get old is about 80. That was back in high school. But I since found out that I was unusual because most kids thought 50 would be old.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we go from there, and I was, uh, well, I lived in that house as you go down Briarcliff, what it is now. It would be the first house up on the bank. It's an old house. And I never knew till after my um, parents died that thought I was always an only child, which I really am and was, because I guess my aunt, my mom's sister, told me later in life after my parents were gone that my mother had lost a little baby boy. She fell down those tremendously steep steps at that house and lost the baby. And I guess if it was a boy, they was going to name it Little Donald.
Oh.
And I'm glad I found that out because I would have never known it.
Yeah.
And so then we moved I was 4 years old. Well, no, I would have been younger than that. And we moved to the house at the bottom of 586 and 16. And that's where the baskets being sold out of or was. And I visited that house after, well, it would have been, gosh, I was married and had grandkids. And they put that basket place in there. So I went and asked if I could go and look in it, and they let me. And I can remember the things in that house, the way where they were and everything, because I was there a long time. So there used to be bums would come. My dad worked away all week and was home on the weekends, and my mom was scared to death of that one bum, Carrie Farrell. Maybe I shouldn't name the name.
It's okay.
But he would steal anything he could get his hands on. And then there was another one named Dio Adams. And I was 3.5 to 4 years old. And I remember Dio was so sweet. And he lived down around the railroad tracks. And my mother would give him potatoes and stuff he could cook down at the railroad. And she would allow me to go outside and talk to him. So I have that sweet memory of that bum yet today. And so then we moved. Well, I was a little bit mischievous.
Not you.
my mom and dad left me with and we lived with a lady named Aunt Jane, and which she was really nice. And so one day when they went to town, they left me with her, and we was out picking stuff up, sticks and stuff in the yard. And I said, "Here's one, Aunt Jane. Here's one," and it was dog doo doo. And then another time, I was around 3.5 to 4 years old. There was bushes out in front of that house, and I didn't understand why she could take her teeth out and in, and I couldn't.
She had dentures.
So I got down. I stole the teeth, I guess. And my mom was telling me that. And I got down in the bushes, and they was trying to coax me out so I wouldn't break them. And they had an awful time, and finally I did give up. And then another time in the living room in that house. Oh, by the way, I went through the house and into the kitchen, and there was a pantry off to the right with lots of canned goods and stuff. And then the back door, and that's where I went out. And I could still, that was pretty much the way I remembered it when I went out there and where I went out to sit with Dio Adams. So then this time in the living room was beautiful, large drapes. And on them drapes was beads, which they called portieres at the time. So uh, I don't know what my mom said I would say, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. And they couldn't figure out what I was talking about. And so then finally she discovered that I was messing with my ears. So we had no car, so she had to carry me part way from that 586 to Frazeysburg to the doctor's.
And that's about 4 miles?
Yeah. And then, but she got me into Dr. Tilton, and here I had poked those beads in my ears.
Oh.
And he said if I hadn't got them out of there, I might have went deaf because I had them in both ears.
Oh my, Alma.
Oh, so anyhow, that's not the worst trick. We'll get to that worst one I ever did later on, and I still laugh and crack up. But anyway, we moved from that house to where I live, well, on the farm there on Cannon Road. And that didn't used to be Cannon Road, it was just a route. And then they went along and named the roads after the first person that lived on that road. That's how they got that name.
Okay.
And so anyhow, I started out about, moved there when I was 4. And, well, I'm trying to think. Anyhow, my dad, it was time about war, and I guess this would have been, I'm getting the cart before the horse a little bit, but we had animals of all kinds. And my dad worked away all week and was home on the weekends. He worked on the railroad on a cement gang, pouring cement and bridges and stuff like that. And so we didn't have a car only when he was there at that time. People didn't have 2 or 3 cars. So anyway, this would have been a little bit later in my life there. I don't know, probably 8, 9, 10. And the World War II came along, and it was drafting the men. And I guess I knew how to pray back then, because my mother told me they was going to take my daddy to war, and it just upset me. And I had this old pet pig named Old Betsy, and I said, "Dear God, if you will let my daddy not have to go to war, I'll give you Old Betsy." And so anyway, then as I growed up, we had, well, there's so many things. But anyway, another time when we lived back at that other house, the first one, my mother was there alone and she had to milk the cow and so on. So this one time she left me in the house and till she got the milking done, which it was several feet from the house. And she said that I had eaten this whole big hunk of cheese while she was gone.
I love cheese.
She was afraid that I would have a problem, but I don't know if I did or not. That didn't come up. So then, when we were still at that house, the first one, across from where I did live in that older house there, across 586, there was a house, a church, and a house, which it's old and like a landmark. That church is today. That's why it's still.
It's gone. It fell down.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Lois and Jay Myers lived in that house that sat down there. Beautiful house, and we used to go there. And so anyway, I think, oh, there's another trick that happened. Before we moved from that house, this Aunt Jane had a sister that would come to visit. And she, I guess I'm finding more mischievous stuff. But anyhow, we at that time no bathrooms. We had outhouses, and the like a catalog, a big thick catalog, and that's what you use for toilet tissue. And so anyhow, I my Aunt Jane, I would go out there and look at that catalog, and she would have to holler for me, or if I was okay or where was I. So this one day, her sister came to visit, and she told me I didn't want to sit in that place out there. It kind of stinky. You don't want to sit there. And her sister had come, and they stayed out there for about an hour. And I said, "Must have smelled pretty good to you today. Daisy was here." So anyhow, back to the farm on Cannon Road. Um, let's see. There's so many things. Well, anyhow, I might have to go backwards on some other stuff, but as I grew up, probably at the age of 7, 8, and 9, Mom and I had to do all the work through the week. We had cows, pigs, horses, sheep, and chickens, everything. And I would have to pull up hay with the horses when Dad was home, and on the weekends. And then Mom and I, when we went to the chicken house on the hill, she had well, this one old rooster was mean, and I didn't like when to pick the eggs out from under the hen because she'd peck you, and I hated that. And my mom didn't mind it, and then she didn't like that old rooster. And so that old rooster, he would, he was going to flop her, and she scared to death of him. I said, "You let me have the rooster and you take the hen." So I got a bucket, a plastic bucket, and he come at me with that spur, and I whacked him with that bucket, and he never ever done that again. That was the end of it. And I guess I want to jump. I want to jump to another time they left me at, like I say, 7, 8, 9, probably 8 or 9 at this point. And my aunt had some health problems, so many weeks a year, each year she would come and stay with us. Her kids were bigger, and that and the husband got along. She had some thyroid trouble, and she would come and stay a week or two at a time. Well, this is my best funny thing of my whole life. But anyhow, my Aunt Velma was my mom's only sister, or only other sibling. So anyhow, they left me with her that one day again to go get groceries and all that kind of stuff. And I had this, of course, all planned. So anyhow, the barn had horse stables in the barn, a couple of them, and different things. A cow would go in on the other side and the sheep back in the back when they went in and out. So anyhow, this one day they left me with her, and when after they left, I said, "Aunt Velma, I want to show you something out here in the barn." And so she went with me, and I walked in the horse stable area first, and she followed me in, and I ran back out around her and locked her in.
Miss Alma, rotten, huh?
So anyway, I knew that there was this nest of rotten eggs in there. I can't help but laugh. And I didn't even, or wasn't going to try to hit her at all. I didn't mean to ever do that. But here I am. I said, "Now I got you where I want you." And I would just start splatting them again the backs of the horse stable, and they would splatter, and she would yell, which like I said, I never wanted to hit her, and I didn't. And so anyhow, I tell you, that was funny. So then jumped out. Well, what I had to do was when I locked her in, I went around and jumped over in the manger and then into the horse stall. So she couldn't get out. And I had to do the same routine to get back out and then unlock the door. But of course, I got in big trouble for that one.
I bet you did.
That was the worst thing I ever did. So, anyway, um, see.
Did your dad have to go to war?
Oh yeah, he worked every weekend.
Did he have to go to war?
Oh no.
No?
No.
So you're praying work.
He had flat feet.
Okay.
It wouldn't take him.
That's luck, huh?
Yeah.
Good.
And so old Betsy stayed home and
you got to keep the pig and your dad. Awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, there's so many things that and then let's see. Oh, like I said, I used to pull the hay up and out in the barnyard and then pull it up with a pulley, big old long pulley up into the hay mow.
Horse drawn?
Yeah.
Okay.
I rode a horse and done that.
Oh, so you were a little cowgirl too.
I guess, in a way. And the one thing I hated, of course, was having to get on the hay wagon and where the hay was be throwed up, you know.
Yeah.
And then that itchy stuff. I hated that. And then later on, I had a mule named Eeyore. That was after I was married. There's Eeyore's over there.
Oh, yeah. I remember the story about Eeyore.
Yeah. So anyhow, I know it got kicked by that other person's horse that we was letting be in our field. And couldn't save it. It was bleeding internally. And Ralph said, "Do I want another?" And I said, "No, because it could outlive me. You know, they have a long life."
Yeah, I want one really bad.
Oh, if I ever did have gotten one, I would want even a littler.
A mini?
Yeah, that was not very big, but it was bigger than Minnie. Oh, yeah, them minis is so cute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, there's so many things. Of course, back then we couldn't go hardly any place because we didn't have a vehicle. And there was a man who lived past the house, the second house we lived in on Cannon Road. He had a house up in the woods, him and his wife, Bill Denman. And there was a store over at Black Run. You would probably
by the train tracks?
Yeah, right on, almost on the train tracks.
Okay.
And that's where the mail was and all of that stuff, and then a grocery store and everything.
Okay.
Charlie Hamby had it.
Okay.
There's a man that ran it.
And his family owns Hamby Hill Farms now, right? His ancestors, or
I don't know if that's part of that family or not.
I bet it is.
I bet it is too. Never thought about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that Bill Denman used to, every time he knew we were alone and couldn't get out to get nothing, so he would walk and get odds and ends of groceries clear from our house across the fields and down there to that tracks at that store to get stuff. And I remember not having much and I'm telling you, I was so excited. He would bring Kool-Aid over. Mom would order stuff and it would have little charms in it. And I thought that was the greatest thing on earth because I didn't get nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would bring Cheez-Its. They had them back then, and to this day, I love Cheez-Its. I even put them in tomato soup.
And that'd be in the 40s, probably?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd have to be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, of course, eventually, that poor old man, his wife died, then he finally passed. And I remember he gave me a white dish with like a milk white, and it had lattice work around the edges. It's beautiful, and it finally got a piece broke out of it, but I saved it in the summer kitchen as a memory of that man. And then down the road, well, about that age, I don't know why, up by the cemetery and up on that hill, they used to dig coal out of those mines up in there. There was coal mines, probably still is up there. And this Mr. Montgomery, I think his wife's name was Stella. I know it was. And I was wearing red fingernail polish, and he didn't like it. And I remember he said, "Don't wear that stuff." And do you know I haven't worn it all these years since I was 7 or 8 years old because of that man. I wore clear. And the same way with a man at church, my church. He was responsible, something he said to me for me being baptized and being a Christian. I mean, he didn't have the whole thing to do with it, but a big part. Actually, being baptized, because he would just say, I liked him. Harvey Dixon was his name. And he would say things to me, and I knew that he must have cared or he wouldn't have said anything to me. And so that happened at the age of 15.
Okay.
And
you were born again.
Yeah. And of course, I had to grow a lot because I was young. And so anyway, I never regretted that a bit, I'll tell you.
I bet not.
No. And I was listening Sunday morning to the TV. When I can't go to church, I have to do that. And it made me realize some of that stuff, that how much I had memorized, and it's in my head and in my soul about, well, the scripture. I didn't realize how much of it I knew by heart. It's phenomenal. I mean, I didn't realize that. Even now, I'm realizing more when I see that. But anyhow, I didn't mean to get that place yet. But anyway, trying to think where I'm at. The rotten stuff.
Well, then you got to being baptized.
Yeah, I jumped several
15,
years there. Yeah. But dear God, this is embarrassing. But I can tell it now. He's dead. My father went to church and my mom did too. But my dad, I don't know how young he was when he was baptized or anything. I don't know that. But anyhow, I remember him sitting in church, and I recently told our minister he got tears over the podium, and then he apologized. And I said, that's what I like about you. You show your human side, and your compassion, and not just a hard-nosed person. And I said, that's what my dad used to do when he sat in church and something would touch him. And that's what made me notice it so much with him. So anyway, see there, I sidetracked myself on that.
It's okay.
There's so many things. Can't even get started again. Where was I before I?
You were right about 15.
Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, at church, I was going steady with a boy at school. And that had been going on a short time, not a big long time or nothing. And I really knew that he was a wonderful person, but he wasn't for me. And the reason was he was too slow gated. And I didn't hate it, but I didn't want that either. So anyhow, I met Ralph while I was dating him. But in the meantime, we had youth group at church. And I never missed it every Sunday night. And this one guy, went to school with my dad. noticed when I'd be in the choir, he would wink, and smile, and so on. And I thought, I don't know what I think about this. So finally, it ended up later. I told my mother, and she thought, no, not a man went to school with your dad. He's the same age. And well, it is hard to comprehend.
Absolutely.
And so one night after church, or after the youth group, we were still in the church. I was up front yet, and that guy was, as you come out where the baptism was and come down, just 3 or 4 seats down that way, he was standing, and he said, I don't suppose you would consider going out with me. I thought, oh my gosh. I said, it shocked me so. I said, I'm going steady. Thank God I had that guy's ring. Or it wouldn't matter.
In church.
Yeah. Crazy hard up.
That's okay.
Sorry,
no,
I'm on
fine.
that.
No, you're fine. You're okay. I don't think you could say anything that make the world blush, Miss Alma.
So anyway, that he come to our house around my dad after that. And I don't know if any of that subject was ever brought up or not, but I'm telling you, before that night, I was holding a baby after a dinner there in the church basement. And he come up to me and whispered in my ear, he said, you look better with that baby than its mother. And see, then I knew that something was up. And it just made me,
sick.
Yeah. And so.
Your dad's age.
Yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah.
My Lord have mercy. So anyway, after I was married and had kids, I was at the church. They had them parenting days. And I was at the church doing whatever we was doing for that event. And, of course, it was blocked off, the road, but you could drive in if you had a display or anything in there. And so when I went to leave, I had to go real slow. And between our church and the Methodist, I was really slow. So when it hit anybody, the streets was full of people. And all of a sudden, my car door flew open. And it was him. He jumped in my car. After all those years, and see, from about 15 to, gosh, I'd have to be 20-some.
Wow.
And he said, why don't you and I just take off? I tell you, but that was the end of it. I never had to worry about it anymore. I don't know what happened. I don't know what I said to him or what, but that was the end of it. Thank heavens. But another woman that went to our church, I wanted to tell her so bad because she went to school with him, but I just couldn't. I thought, that's dumb and awful. So that's something that my kids may or may not know. I doubt it.
Well, and it's odd that grown men do that to young women because it's uncomfortable for them to talk about to anybody.
Oh, heavens.
So that helps them get away with it.
Yeah, sickening.
In the church even, that's really
And see,
horrible.
Nobody knew it. Because I sure wasn't about to tell it.
Yeah, he watched you grow up. That's weird.
Yeah, probably so.
That's weird.
And knew I wasn't a nut.
Yeah, that's weird.
So anyhow, it was crazy all of that.
How did you meet your husband?
Oh, okay. We were, okay, let me see here. First of all, we had church camp, and I always went to that too, up around Round Lake and up in there. And there was this guy named Ralph Combs, and he was really a cool guy. Ooh, handsome as could be. And he had, I never met him before till we went up there. So we had a counselor that was also counseling some of the boys. And all my sister girlfriends from church, they was all swooning over this guy. And then one evening when we was having called Vespers, we'd sing and go up the hill, and then we would have prayer and all this stuff, and then maybe a winter roast or something. And this counselor tapped me on the shoulder. He said, "I got somebody that wants to meet you." So it was this guy, and he came down clear from Centerburg 2 or 3 times, but he didn't have a car. He wasn't out of school and didn't have a job yet. So I always wanted to tell him that I wouldn't, that it wasn't his fault nor my fault. It just was the circumstances that he couldn't get there. He had his brother and sister come with him once. And I looked up, my cousin from Bladensburg called me a few years ago and said that he had passed, this Ralph. And so I thought, oh dear. So I went to the library in Newark and got a printout of his everything. And that was the weirdest thing. He had the same middle initial as my Ralph, E. He had the same amount of children. He loved sports, same as Ralph. Oh yeah, same amount of children. There was just 2 or 3, 4 things.
So that's probably the man you would have married if you wouldn't have met your husband.
I believe that would be true. And I know that later on in life he got obese. But he was the sweetest thing. So obesity wouldn't have bothered me. I probably wouldn't have let him got that way,
right?
For his health. But anyway, the last time he came, we didn't have a car, of course, and we did that day, but it didn't matter because I just walked from my house up to the house above, to where my aunt and uncle lived, and when I got ready to leave, I came out of the driveway, and it was him. He had just come back that day, and I hadn't seen him in months or heard from him. So I just assumed that it was over. And then down there in the field, oh my goodness, just down the road where I lived in the farm, my Ralph Klein was cutting wood with my dad in that field. They come that near clashing.
And that might have been a problem.
Oh, yeah. So anyhow, when I met Ralph as a kid, again, 8, 9, 10, we would take my dad, if we had the car on the weekends, we would have to take my dad to the train station in Newark, and he worked in the Pennsylvania and Steubenville area, West Virginia, a lot over in there. So, and I used to go on the train. I don't know, my kids wouldn't know that either. He had free passes, and I would go and stay every summer with my aunt and uncle, which Aunt Alma I was named after. And I would go over there and stay, and they spoiled me rotten. They had no kids. So anyway, then I would go on the weekends, and we would get the car. Then we'd have to go back on Friday night and pick my dad up again. So Ralph was coming off of that train. He worked in the same area, and they lived in camp cars, like train coaches.
Yeah.
And again, my kids wouldn't even comprehend that, my grandkids. So anyhow, he would work on those bridges and so on and so forth. So Ralph worked with him. So he'd be on that train, and lo and behold, he's probably been watching me back then, And then I wasn't allowed to date nobody till I was at least 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rule. So anyway, he got so that he would say that he would come hunting with my dad, rabbit hunting. And we had lots of rabbits in the fields around us. So anyhow, it finally got where he would, call me. We would go in the living room by ourselves and play checkers. And out of, I don't know how many games of checkers, I probably ran one or two.
He whooped you, huh?
Well, I don't know. I probably didn't have my mind on checkers. So anyhow, he kept coming, and even though I wasn't allowed to date, and I broke one rule in my whole uh, upbringing. I wasn't supposed to ride home or anything with boys or something. And I did skip school one time with not with him.
Oh, you rebel.
And it was with Darlene Flaherty, or your Cannon then, her oldest sister. And I don't even know who the guy was. Okay. So anyway, I see.
Did you get caught when you skipped school?
No.
No?
No. I'm glad, because I would have been in big trouble.
We got your butt whooped.
Ooh. I don't know what they would have done. I really don't. So anyhow, then just had that on the tip of my tongue. Oh, so finally, then we would play checkers and play checkers and play checkers, and finally he had to be taken to the war. And my grandma Hall, my mother's mother, she was living with us for a while, because of health reasons and to recuperate. And she loved my Ralph, and so anyhow, I remember she cried when he had to go to war. He left in November of a couple years ahead, I think. I don't know how many. Well, yeah, he was in there over a year, I know.
What year did he leave for the war?
52.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Yeah, it would have been early 52.
Okay.
Couldn't have been, yeah, because we were married in 53.
Okay.
So it had to be. So anyway, he, well, I knew he was dating this girl, and I wasn't allowed to date. So when my dad would go to town, I'd go with him to get groceries or whatever he had to do. So I knew that the girl that he dated was working at Scott's Furniture Store on the corner of when you first go into Newark. So I would go sit in the park while Dad was and case that place. And
Were you being jealous?
Yeah. Oh, I was really pretty bad about jealousy.
Oh,
when it
really?
concerned to him, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. He was mine.
I'd have never guessed it.
Oh, yeah.
But I like it.
That could have been a bad trait, of mine, because I would be a little spiteful if anything ever happened. I know I would have.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
But
I feel the same way about my husband. I love him. That's my person.
Yeah.